everybody and welcome back to Typical City. Two players have rapidly climbed the priority ladder as transfer targets for Manchester City. And let's start with Lucas Paqueta. Lucas Paqueta has rapidly climbed this ladder because of Kevin De Bruyne's injury. Now, this injury isn't yet been determined, and how severe this injury is going to be. How many weeks are we going to lose Kevin De Bruyne for? Because we're looking at 3 to 4 weeks as a minimum. I would suggest anything to do with the hamstring, you're looking at a month on average, really. The severity can increase to 6 to 8 weeks, and you could end up getting into 2 months, which would be a huge blow. And that creativity that we all know Kevin De Bruyne has got is gone all of a sudden. We're relying on Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Grealish, and other players like this. Kovacic can step into that role potentially. There's no one like Kevin De Bruyne, and that includes Lucas Paqueta, unfortunately. But Lucas Paqueta is a player that has been wasted at West Ham. Now, a bid has already gone in for Lucas Paqueta at £70 million. That's been rejected. So apparently, according to Fabrizio Romano, the reports are suggesting that this bid is going to be increased. How much are we going to have to pay for Lucas Paqueta? That is the big question. How far will this transfer saga run? I think it's heavily dependent on West Ham's dealings as well. And we've started to see numerous players coming in at West Ham. And I think that's a knock-on effect. The dominoes are starting to tumble at West Ham. We saw already Declan Rice out. We were involved in that deal as well, so he's gone. Then they've lost Scamacca as well, another player that was highly sought after, very upset at West Ham. And these players now that they've lost, and namely Declan Rice, in that midfield, and if you add Lucas Paqueta to that situation, they've got big holes that need filling. Now they're bringing in James Ward-Prowse for £30 million. That deal's been agreed. So there's a little stepping stone for Paqueta to step on his way out of the door and give more of a reason why this deal might happen. The Lucas Paqueta deal might happen because of the players that West Ham have got their eyes on as well. You've got Edson Alvarez, who came in for just over £30 million. He's a direct replacement for Declan Rice. James Ward-Prowse brings something new. Now, the player that's reportedly supposed to be Paqueta's replacement is Scott McTominay. Now, they're looking for 40 to 45 million. So it seems like United have a finger in the pie that is the Paqueta pie and involved with City. Seems like United are going to have an influence on how likely this deal is going to happen, because if they can get their man, Scott McTominay, comes into West Ham, that therefore frees up them to sell on Lucas Paqueta to Manchester City. So United have a say in what's going to happen with Paqueta's future, because if they don't bring in Scott McTominay, they're looking for that versatile box-to-box player. McTominay can be that box-to-box player, the player that Lucas Paqueta obviously is. I think he's going to leave a certain role at West Ham and join Manchester City and play a very different role to what we've seen in a West Ham shirt. In a City shirt, he's going to be, I think, much more advanced up the pitch. He can definitely defend. We saw all City fans likely tuned into the Bournemouth West Ham game to see what it's like, what Paqueta plays like for 90 minutes. I did just that, and he is wasted at West Ham. I think he's on a leash right now. I think he's been restricted in what his capabilities are. The question is, if the Scott McTominay deal goes through, though, that's good news. That rolls out the red carpet for Paqueta to join Manchester City. But for how much? How much they spend on Scott McTominay is probably a knock-on effect to how much they charge for Lucas Paqueta. Now, 70 million's been rejected. I believe 85 million is probably enough to get the deal done, but we've already seen people talk about 100 million. It can't be 100 million. Cannot be 100 million. I'll be gutted if it goes over 90 million, in truth. I think 90 million for this player is too much. I think 85 million, you're in the ballpark for breaking the worth value. You know, is he going to be that much, that offer £85 million worth of player? I think he is. I think 85 million is the cap in what City should go to, though. I think we should be going at 75 million with 10 million add-ons or something like that. Sweeten the deal a little bit. And then you bring in other factors. So there are lots of avenues for this deal to go down, and how McTominay is going to affect the deal. How do West Ham even want to sell the player full stop? And then there's the Cole Palmer avenue. Is he involved in the deal? Because he is supposedly on his way to West Ham. Now, is that going to be a permanent deal or a loan deal? Is it going to be a direct involvement as one package deal? Because we talk about swap players and players that go into one club and go to the other club as a part of the same deal. I'm not convinced it will be part of the same deal, namely because City do have tendencies to add clauses to the sell-on any sort of sale we make, especially for young players, your James Traffords and any player that goes out on loan, basically, with Kelechi and Acho, players like this, that we add buyback clauses or sell-on clauses, and it really gets complicated if you start having a Paqueta going the other way to City. So I think the two deals will be kept separate. The question is whether it's a loan or whether it's a permanent deal. Now, the permanent deal side of things will obviously involve buyback clauses, sell-on clauses. I personally would prefer City to loan Cole Palmer out. Now, I've said it all summer that it's rare for players to go out on loan, come back to the club that they've been loaned out from, and find their place in the first team squad after being already loaned out. It's starting to happen more frequently. I actually think Chelsea, who have been the king of loans, they've loaned out an army of players across Europe. They've got 3 or 4 teams worth of players that they could field, all from loanees that are all across the world. They've got that many. In fact, you're already seeing glimpses of their loan model that they like to implement starting to integrate into the first team. We saw Ian Maatsen come on for Chelsea against Liverpool. Conor Gallagher is another example that went on loan to Crystal Palace. Ian Maatsen went on loan to Burnley. So we're seeing numerous players that are going out on loan at Chelsea and coming back. City themselves, James McAtee has found his way back into the first team. He came on and got a couple of minutes the other night against Burnley. Is he going to stay and be part of the first team squad? Because we don't know. And that's why I want Cole Palmer to go out on loan, because I believe there's a future there for him. He's a City fan, a local lad, and it would be heartbreaking to lose him permanently, because I think that I know the buyback clauses and the sell-on clauses, they're rarely getting activated. Romeo Lavia is another player that we could have gone in for. We've not activated the buyback clause, and Cole Palmer is someone who I think he's not just a flash in the pan. I think there is a player there that could grow, really, really could go. And, I would be gutted to see him go permanently. I think the loan is the right move and maybe find his way back into the first team. But him himself is another player that's very similar to the types of players that we already have in the squad in that particular position. So then you start looking at Jeremy Doku, and why are Pep and City targeting Jeremy Doku? And I think the variation, having a different tool for Pep Guardiola to use, because we have there's a mould of player that Pep Guardiola likes, and so we've seen him go through phases of players and that suit certain tactics, and certain formations are suited to having certain players in that formation. The likes of Sterling and Sane were very suited when we had a flat back four, and Benjamin Mendy and Kyle Walker were bombing it down the wings and supporting Sane and Sterling. In those formations, it was very, very wide based. Now our wide players, they stay wide, but they tuck in and they cut inside onto their stronger foot, which their stronger foot often draws them inside rather than going to the byline. Now maybe we're starting to see Pep have a mix of the two, because he's got Grealish, he's got Bernardo Silva. These two players, even Cole Palmer, naturally want to cut inside. We don't have any players anymore that want to just burst down the outside. Now Jeremy Doku fits the bill in that regard, and I think it's a great signing if City were to get him. The question again is the fee, with a bid expected to come in at the end of the week. Now City are supposed to be going in, this is also from Fabrizio Romano, for just over 30 million, but Stade Rennais want 45 to 50 million pounds. So again, it's starting to look quite a pricey deal all of a sudden. A great player, but 45 million is quite a big chunk of change, that, for a very young and unknown prospect, because the leap that he's making, he's going from Stade Rennais to Manchester City. This is a monstrous gulf in quality of the clubs and the expectancy, the levels that are going to be thrown at this kid. It's going to be a big task for him. And I don't think he's going to be thrown straight into the first team. I think he's going to be slowly integrated with a few minutes here and a few minutes there over the course of the season. And maybe next year we'll see Jeremy Doku flourish more. I don't think he is going to be a signing that he's going to rip up the Premier League in his first season. Maybe he will, but I think he'll be slowly bedded in if we were to sign him. Now, the question for me over Jeremy Doku is his end product. If you look at him immediately, I saw watching him play, I thought Saint Maximin, and I think Adama Traore. These type of players that are just such a joy to watch. You watch them receive the ball. Saint Maximin receives the ball and you're on the edge of your seat. Adama Traore, you're like, oh, what's he going to do next? What's he going to do next? And it's like, oh, he's beat a player. He's beat a player down the wing. He's beat another player. He's got to the byline and he's crossed it out for a throw-in. Those types of players. They're worrying at times, and I loved watching them play, but they just drive me insane. And hopefully, Jeremy Doku doesn't do that. It's so difficult to run at the speed these players run at with the ball and then to relax all your muscles just to offer a little dinky cross. You know, like Sterling was really good at that. We think about that one cross against Aston Villa when we won the league 2-0 down, and Gundogan's first goal with the header, back post at the Etihad to the last game of the season, that was from a Sterling cross, and he used his speed to get to the byline, but he relaxed his body and he relaxed his muscles, and he did a little dinky cross right to the back post. Adama Traore, St. Maximin, they're whacking that all the way over everybody's head and going out for a throw-in on the opposite side of the pitch. Jeremy Doku needs to learn how to compose himself. From all the highlights I've seen, it's 100 mile an hour or not at all with him. And that's an issue with Pep Guardiola because we need end product. It's all good and well getting to the byline and exciting everybody in the process, but it means nothing if the cross just bypasses Erling Haaland or Julian Alvarez. You know, if the City player isn't on the end of the cross, then it was a waste of time even getting to the byline. So that is an area of his game that you hope Pep Guardiola and all the coaches at City can get involved with Jeremy Doku and teach him. I believe he can. And there's a player there. Clearly there's a player there. He might not even need the end product from a cross point of view. It might be a finishing ability. All I'm talking about is Jeremy Doku's end product is the only issue of his game that doesn't suit City. Every other aspect of Jeremy Doku absolutely suits City from a different point of view, and Pep being able to throw a player on that can just be a live wire and a busybody. Jeremy Doku excites me. He really does. It's just that end product. That's all that concerns me, and you just hope that this can be taught to the kid, and some tutelage from Pep Guardiola can take Jeremy Doku's game from not just being potential, turning him into a class act and potentially a world-class player if the end product is refined, you know, and polished to perfection. That's what we need from Jeremy Doku. But Blues, Lucas Paqueta, what do you think about the deal? How far would you take Lucas Paqueta's bid? Would you go into the 90 million? Would you even go to 100 million? Because I don't think City are going to ever pay 100 million pound. Not for a player of this quality again. I think it's going to be a long time before you see City spend 100 million because of the backlash that we received from Grealish's fee of 100 million. They don't want that again, and having that association with any player, just avoid it at all costs. There's no point. Even though other clubs are doing it, avoid it. Then Jeremy Doku, how far would you take that bid? Up to 50 million? Is that a lot? That's quite a bit, a chunk of change for a player that's just potential right now. Exciting, don't get me wrong, but 50 million for potential, you expect more than just potential when you're spending 50 million pounds on a player. So it's an interesting transfer window. I think the two signings would be definitely beneficial to City, in particular because of Kevin De Bruyne's injury. Jeremy Doku, it is something completely different and incredibly exciting. But Blues, get your comments in below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like and subscribe. Typical City is the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is typical City now, holding up silverware.